Okay, so for my ISP project, I decided to read the book Life of Pi. And the reason I chose this book is because I think the author found a really unique view on how to write the story. And I think that it's all about survival and the will to live and self discovery. And my thesis on this story is how the main character's subconscious creates fictional beings, and I believe this is true because the way that this book is written, it kind of gives little hints and little giveaways on how you would think that this might be real and it might not be real. So I'm going to be giving examples of why I think this, how I think, and why I think this story proves my thesis. So right now I'm just going to give a little bit of background. And so the book starts off with the early life of Pi, and Pi is the main character. So basically, Pi studies zoology and religion because he's very curious about how different views and a lot of different things work, things that he hasn't been brought up or raised by, but he still wants to know them. So, the first scene that I want to talk about to prove my thesis on why Pi's subconscious creates things that aren't really there is the shipwreck scene where Pi's parents take him and all the animals from the zoo on this ship to go to Canada. So during their expedition, the ship starts to sink. So automatically, Pi jumps into the water because he wants to live, he wants to save himself, he wants to be able to survive this. And basically, Pi's, I guess you could say, companion is a tiger whose name is Richard Parker. We are introduced to him in the beginning. And basically, Pi treats this animal like an actual person. So when the shipwreck is happening and the author is describing this scene to us, the readers, basically what we get a feel of is that Richard Parker, this big, ferocious tiger, is going to save Pi. But that's not so much the case. And I think we noticed this because when Pi jumps into the water, and so does Richard, they go separate ways, but they end up going to the same place, which I'll talk about later. But I think that this is a good example on why I feel that Pi's mind has just made this up for him because, like, the way that Pi treats him is like a person, like a family member. And we all know that that's not possible. And I think that his mind has made up the idea of a tiger as a friend because of this loneliness that he feels. And I think in his situation, it would make his will to survive much more realistic or capable because he's not alone, so he has something to live for. And the second reason is after Pi and the tiger, they're in the ocean and they separate. Pi actually gets into a life raft with more animals, a zebra, a monkey, and a hyena. And basically, this is another good example of how Pi's mind makes up these beings, these animals, is because he doesn't really have anybody else to talk to. You're assuming that his parents are no longer alive, that everybody else on the ship is no longer alive either. So it's really just him by himself. And by making up these characters as he goes through his adventure, it makes it more livable. He's not lonely, he's not by himself. He can see things. He's not delusional, but for us the readers, we know that this would be far too unlikely to actually happen. And throughout the scene, Pi gets on the boat, and the hyena ends up attacking the zebra and the monkey, and then tries to go for Pi. Pi doesn't know what to do, so he's just sitting on the boat, basically waiting for this hyena to attack. And then out of nowhere, Richard Parker comes in and saves him. He ends up killing the hyena, and then Richard Parker and Pi end up at sea together on this lifeboat. And the readers know that this would never be able to happen. Pi would never be able to be friends, or actually be able to speak to, or be in the same room as a tiger, because it's just not possible. Animals don't do that. And again, his subconscious has made up these animals to hide the fact that he's alone trying to survive, when the odds are so far against his favor that if any of us were in the actual position, it probably wouldn't exactly work out the way that we want it. So, my third example is Pi and Richard Parker wash ashore this island, and there's no threats on this island that Pi can tell from. So he spends a while on this island, just going back to his vegetarian ways, so he doesn't need to eat meat. He eats whatever he can find, like berries or leaves or anything like that. And basically, there are other animals on this island, but Pi realizes that the island itself is the predator here. So at night, anything that is on the island basically eats it. The island eats anything that's on the surface. And Pi realized this because he found a tooth in the sand while he was digging. And again, the readers, as well as myself, find ourselves thinking, how is this even possible? He has to be imagining it, because an island can't eat itself. It's not at all possible in the real world, or even in a book. So Pi is imagining this because, and I think that it's the reason of delusion, because he might not be by himself necessarily, but he can't actually have conversation with this tiger that he has spent with on the island. He doesn't have anyone to talk to. He can't try and figure out a plan because he's by himself. And I think that this is a really good example, because it just showcases the illusions and delusions of what Pi is going through on this island alone. So overall, after the scene, him and Richard Parker get in the boat and they sail away, because obviously they can't stay. Excuse me. And by the end of the story, we can make these connections that Pi's subconscious made these animals in the place of actual people. So you could say that Pi is actually Richard Parker the tiger. You could say that basically the monkey is his mother, or the zebra is his father, and the hyena could be the whole kind of situation that he is put in. And I think that this really showcases how powerful the human mind can really be at certain points in time. And I think that these examples really prove the thesis that I'm trying to find in this story. Overall, I enjoyed this book a lot. I found that by reading this book, you can learn a lot about yourself and how you would react in certain situations, and you can even see how your mind can form into this this bubble, but at the same time, you can see yourself trying to figure out this situation. Because most people, by reading this book, they wouldn't think that maybe Pai's mind is just making up these animals as he goes because he's going insane or anything. But I think that a certain mindset or a certain view on the book could really broaden the spectrum in which you see things. And I think that's a really good aspect to have in a book, especially a book about survival, which is one of the reasons I chose it.